This is Leisha Holmes, and I'm your host on the Recruitment podcast. And I was actually physically accosted by this next guest to come back onto our show. If you have been a fan of our podcast since we launched in 2020, you will hopefully have at some point listened or watched this next guest, who was actually one of our most popular episodes ever out of the first 4 seasons we've ever had. And he's somebody that I've had the pleasure to get to know in real life and also as his online persona, and somebody that I've got a huge amount of respect for, not least because he just doesn't bullshit. He says it as it is. Comes from a similar mindset to me, I'd like to think, on some things. And I can't wait for anyone that's only just joining our podcast this season to get to know this week's guest, who is Mitch Sullivan. Welcome back, Mitch. How are you?
I'm fine, Leisha. Nice to see you again.
Very nice to see you again. I only saw you physically at the Recruitment Agency Expo in real life in October 2024. It was a great day. Did you enjoy it?
Yeah, I did. Probably for the wrong reasons, though, because I probably spent half the time I was there, more than half the time, sat in the bar with various people that I knew. I kind of go to those things just because I think I should get out more, because I don't get out enough. And I know whenever I go to those types of events, I tend to see a lot of the same people. And I think, well, you're event people, whereas I'm a social media person. So I just prefer that channel than getting out and meeting people, because believe it or not, I'm fundamentally an introvert, although I can be extrovert. But
well, you're an ambivert then, apparently. I understand what you say. I'm actually just a people person, and I go to the events because I was a speaker, actually. I don't know if you came to the panel show that was hosted by Angela Cripps, but I also, like you, given I am actually a non-drinker, I spent the rest of the day sat outside the Wetherspoons because A, it was the only place where you could get a signal, and B, I saw too many people that I knew and I wanted to speak to them. And whilst it meant I actually missed all the other seminars that had been booked on to watch as a participant. I actually had the most wonderful day just speaking to real life people and kind of catching up and seeing how everyone's doing, because it's been a very challenging year, 2024. So we'll cover a lot of that, I'm sure.
it has. And 2023 was just as challenging. But yeah, look, I met some people I hadn't met before, even though we come to each other online, and that's always nice. Yeah, so look, it was fine. It was good.
I was going to say, I think that last point is really interesting. And, I know that's not necessarily something that we're going to talk about in the topic today, but I think it's something that for anyone listening, if you get an opportunity to go to a real life event, actually go and meet people that you think you know off LinkedIn, or you think you know off Insta or TikTok, and actually get to know them. And I think it's very intriguing to lift the lid on people's true personalities, as opposed to, maybe this is a nice segue actually, Mitch, as opposed to what they actually share on their LinkedIn posts.
Yeah, okay. Well, look, what you've just said reminded me of something I said to somebody on Facebook about 15 plus years ago. I was a real early adopter on Facebook, 2007, early 2007. And it was wild in those early year or two. A lot of trolling, lots of real nasty stuff going on.
Lots of poking, if you remember. Poking.
Yeah, anyway, I remember saying to someone, look, if you want to genuinely continue disliking someone that you're interacting with on here, don't meet them, because it's impossible to meet someone. And I met a few, because they invariably, it would lead to, hey, let's have a meetup and blah, blah, blah. And I went to one or two, actually, and there was 2 or 3 people there I couldn't stand online. But when I met them, I quite liked them. Right. And that's just one of the kind of crazy aspects of social media, and I think something that we all need to be mindful of. And I've learned, I mean, I've been using social media in some form or another since 2001, believe it or not.
So yeah, I mean, what would that
well, when I say 2001, when I say using social media, it wasn't called that then. But they were discussion forums. I was getting into discussions and arguments and stuff with random strangers on the internet as long ago as 2001.
Oh gosh, I mean, that.
So I'm well practiced.
Maybe people just seem to come to you for some reason, don't they? But we're jumping ahead here.
All right, go on.
But I just give a little overview of what you actually do. Like, talk us through your career and where you are at this point as we record this.
My career, my entire career.
No, like 1 minute bio as to what you actually do, because I'm sure people will be clicking on you, but just give us an overview of what you do.
Okay, right. I've been in recruitment a long time, 33 or 34 years.
Wow.
Started out in agencies. I spent 4 years working in-house, which was a massively rich period in my life because I learned so much more about recruitment. So many things made more sense having had that experience, particularly at the age I was, because I was a bit older and a bit smarter, and I was perhaps more able to confront hiring managers or call them out,
Yeah.
which is tougher to do when you're younger. Um, and yeah, I traded. Doesn't mean that I've been filling jobs as recently as 2 years ago,
Wow.
albeit the number has declined year on year since around 2015. And yeah, I've moved into coaching and training, and I'm now probably most well known for the Copywriting for Recruiters training program that I built with Jackie
Yep.
Barry about 9 years ago now, nearly 9 years ago.
Oh, well,
Yeah.
Shannon came on that course, I think 2017,
That was
2018.
the early days. Yeah, that was.
Days. Yeah, it was definitely. Well, thank you for that. And I appreciate it's probably quite challenging. And I wish we had time. If we've got time at the end, I'd like to just unpick that sort of that really deep comment about internal recruitment and why it was the most rewarding part of your recruitment experience, because I agree with you. And I'm one of those Rec to Recs that I think people that choose to go down that career path are choosing it for that stakeholder management, for strategic resort, understanding the strategy of a business. And I have never subscribed ever to the premise that going into an internal recruitment role means you are a failed recruiter. I think it's the actual opposite, in my opinion.
Look, it's sometimes true, but not as nearly as often as a lot of agency recruiters try to make out. Yeah. So we're going to talk about social media, aren't we?
We are going to talk about social media. So I'm going to kind of just drop a bomb here.
Okay.
Because I think the way you positioned it to me when when we saw each other and you said, let's talk about this on your pod, is around LinkedIn usage and how some recruiters seem to get it right. Some recruiters maybe don't get it right. And then there are lots of these gurus and experts out there. So as you see it, what is the landscape of LinkedIn and why does this topic matter to you so much?
Well, look, it doesn't, well, it matters to me personally because I put all my eggs in the social media basket sort of years ago. I decided that was the channel that best fits my personality and my kind of energy. There's again an old saying that I've been using years ago, which I think is pretty true, which is the internet is the playground for the introvert. Mm-hmm. Yeah. And it kind of resonated with me because I fundamentally see myself as an introvert. And what I loved about it is the fact that you have time to think before responding. You have time to get some context on the person who's making the comment that you're thinking about or you're pissed off about or whatever it might be. And yeah, and it's quick as well. So yeah, I've been using LinkedIn seriously since 2010, really. So that's 14 years, maybe 2011. And I made a conscious decision once I decided I was going to move into coaching, and I started doing what I did on social media a couple of years before I did move into coaching, because I was testing the market essentially. But what I was planning to do was to teach agency recruiters how to move from contingency to retained. Because it's something I had a lot of experience in. I still think it's my main specialist subject. And so I spent 2 years taking the piss out of contingency recruitment, essentially. Which is how I developed a bit of a reputation for being a bit controversial. But it was deliberate because I wanted to get attention.
Of course.
There's obviously some people disliked me. Some disliked me intensely for various reasons. But that's the price you pay by trying to stand out. That's always the price. People like me comfort ourselves with the belief that, well, probably most of those people were never going to become customers anyway, because they would have disliked me at some point. And look, sometimes people just don't, sick to death of the message that I'm putting out there all the time. So that's what happened. I moved into copywriting coaching because I thought, well, this is something that could apply to everybody. The retained coaching really only applies to, I don't know, 10% of perm recruiters at best.
Yep.
Might be more now, but back then it was small. But I did some work for a few years with some recruiters, and it was really, really good. It was interesting. It's fun. The copywriting thing took over really quickly, which I thought, well, there's clearly an appetite for this, and it's got a much wider audience. And really, since about 2016, I mostly talk about advertising.
Yep.
Recruitment advertising in particular, job advertising a lot, obviously, because that's the medium through which we do our training. And yeah, and so like, I have three fundamental kind of positions that I need to kind of take care of, that I'm acutely aware of now, but it took me a while to work them out. So if this helps other people listening, then great. And they all begin with P, funnily enough.
Oh, I like 3 Ps. I like alliteration. Let's do it.
Purpose, philosophy, personalities. That was what I've chosen to call them. So purpose is why are you doing it?
Yeah. I'm going to write these down. Purpose, philosophy. And what was the last one?
Personality.
Personality. Just showing my perimenopause. That's another P for you there. So purpose. So this is why we are doing what we're doing.
Yeah. So, you're selling a product, you're trying to attract customers, generate leads, find a job, find a candidate, learn things. Or you're doing it for vanity, or at the bottom of the triangle, you're a troll. You just go there to wind people up and, cause arguments, which in itself is fun. I've done it on Facebook and it can be fun. But you've got to know why you're there.
Yeah.
Yeah. And my purpose was, I want to build as big a following as possible of mainly recruiters and or people who work in the recruitment industry. So that some of them may one day become customers. Yeah. So and that
you're attracting the right sort of customers from what you're sharing by being authentic in yourself.
Well, yeah, that comes onto the whole sort of philosophy thing. So what you say, and this is where I see some people start to mess up sometimes, in my opinion at least, is it's can they stand by what they're saying? I've seen some people make claims and then get some heat and fold really quickly, or start deleting comments and, blah, blah, blah. So, my philosophy has been, right, well, I'm here to generate customers at the end of the day. It's a long tail from starting to people becoming customers, generally, particularly in any kind of volume. And my approach was always, I need to educate people on the difference between a job ad and a job description.
Agreed.
And that's the one theme that I probably get bang on about the most. I'm sorry.
No, don't be sorry, because I agree with you 100% on it.
Yeah.
It's not a nuance.
So, and I'm trying to influence people to my point of view and why that particular subject is important and what they can do about it. And I try and kind of use humor / sarcasm to deliver it where best I can, to make it, because what I'm trying to do is to make, if I'm going to be selling to people, I think I owe them as a minimum for it to be entertaining in some way.
I agree. Because that's how you learn best anyway. You learn best if you are entertained. You're going to retain it more and probably apply it more. So I think, and like you say, it makes you stand out against other people that are pertaining to do the same thing. Yeah,
and that's kind of then connects to the personality thing, because it's through that, probably that humor, sarcasm, that I try to display some aspects of my personality. And I'm exactly this. I'm as equally as much a piss taker in real life as I am online. Probably more so. And it's just my coping mechanism. It's my way of making sense of the world. So it's rarely ever personal. But anyway, so the personality bit for me is, I don't talk about my private life. The odd couple of times I've referenced my partner, it's been to make a joke or to make a point, but it's using it as a story, because storytelling is the most powerful way people learn new things, as you've just alluded to. So yeah, I don't talk about causes, although I will like certain causes that I fundamentally believe in, although I'm not a fundamentalist on any of them.
Okay.
And I can sometimes see both arguments, but I'm broadly in favor of the work from home option if it's applicable. I'm broadly in favor of any kind of DEI initiatives. you know, and so on. Yeah, I'm a bit left of center generally in terms of how I view the world, and that will sometimes leak out. But I try and stay away from anything political or cultural,
Yep.
just because it's got me into trouble in the past. I just think it's got to stay away. Got to
And like
stay.
you say, that's where my sort of experience, or I'd say limited experience of me being trolled, has maybe been where somebody's had a polar opposite opinion to something that I'm sharing. I don't think I'm particularly offensive in what I share, and I'm taking on board your 3Ps here, and I think they're so intrinsically connected. I think if you don't have all 3Ps, you don't have anything, because I think without showing your personality, how can you possibly have a philosophy to what you're sharing and then you don't have a purpose to it? And I think, if I'm being totally brutal, and I know that's where we're on the same page here, I think that there's so much homogenized content on LinkedIn where it's devoid of any personality and it's devoid of any purpose other than, oh, I know I need to post today, I know I need to keep the algorithm on my side, I'm just going to share something really homogenized, or it's something from the company page, or I'm just going to reshare someone else's post, and it's boring as hell. And also, I don't know if we've got time to cover this whole topic, but we can keep it succinct, I think. AI generated posts can just get in the bin because they don't have any of those things.
Yeah, I haven't been able to spot any yet, but maybe they're so boring that I kind of my eyes move away fairly
Yeah.
quickly. So I don't read it all to consider where it came from.
Yeah.
Um, you know, I've done a lot of research into AI in relation to my corner of the playground, which
Yeah.
is recruitment marketing. And there's loads of tools out there that claim to create job ads, but what they're actually creating is job descriptions, because most of the industry conflates the two as being more or less the same thing. And it's I can't tell the difference between an AI generated, and I've played around with them, with
Right.
an AI generated job ad and one that recruiters typically have written for the last 10 years or 15, 20 years probably, because the quality in job ads declined sharply from the day job boards first turned up.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, yeah,
Uh,
because people just all use the same. My client is.
yeah, and it was quick, it was easy, it was cheap. Yeah, and you know, advertising used to be expensive prior to the internet. So you had to think a bit more carefully about what you were putting out, because
Oh.
you know, you had to make it work as hard as possible. So most most people in the recruitment scene, when confronted with the choice between quality or quantity, will almost invariably press the quantity button. And that's what they did once job boards came along, because now they could get loads and loads of jobs out there for a fraction of the price it used to cost.
Yeah, no, very different premise, isn't it? So we've got a lot of leaders listening. I mean, obviously our audience is, very diverse across the globe, which is fantastic. And we have a lot of people that write in to say that they've been listening. They asked to come on the show as leaders. And I think that's where, for me, I see a disparity between recruiters that are being possibly targeted on sharing posts and sharing jobs, like you said, job adverts or job descriptions, whichever nuance it is. But there are leaders that are still reluctant, perhaps. And I know we talked before we started recording around that sort of personal posts, which I'm quite notorious for. And that's because my personal preference on LinkedIn, I gravitate towards the personal post, because for me, that's how I get to know that individual better than
Mm.
something that they're just sharing that's very top line and a little bit dull, if I'm being honest. Whereas I think the personal posts are the ones where you truly see somebody's purpose in life. Perhaps maybe that's what caused them to set up their own business, which, if we're looking at leaders and what they can share. What's your view on, and I'm not trying to have disparity between groups of people here, but for leadership and those that are aspiring leaders, where would you see sort of LinkedIn from that perspective?
Well, in terms of how leaders should manage their social media,
Yeah.
I, I would never tell anyone how they should do. I think they've got to be aware of those broad principles that I've covered, at least, or how I see them, and then decide how they're gonna interpret them, essentially. So if somebody wants to put stuff up about their life
Mm.
and they have some kind of narrative arc in mind, yeah, and they think they've got lots of stories to share and
Yeah.
think, yeah, then fine, if that's natural to them. It just was never natural to me. particular. I mean, I've done it on some private forums where I know everybody in that forum, but doing stuff publicly, I just, yeah, it's not for me. It's just, I just choose to try and get some personality across in other ways. How I write, how I see things, and how I express them.
Yeah.
Which is the humor, sarcasm thing, which some people have hated, yeah, but most seem to like. So,
But like you said earlier on, I think it's understanding if you really truly define what your purpose is, you are trying to attract certain type of people. And so you will naturally have those people gravitate towards you. I've always felt that I'm magnetized towards people that I'm not saying are just like me, but I've always thought maybe I'm a bit Marmite. Maybe some people think I'm a little bit cheesy or I share too much, overshare kind of thing. And actually, that is me. So
yeah.
I think it's about making sure you're an extension of all of it. So what do you think we like? Where if you have this checklist of what?
Let me just sorry, Lisa, just one last point on that last question, because
Yeah.
I think it might be relevant, is, and you might have a better view of this than me, you probably will, is I don't see how people are going to be interested in someone's personal life without first buying into whatever it is they do, whatever points of view they have.
Agreed.
Yeah. Because for people to like what's happening in your life, or to like a selfie that you've taken outside a funny sign or whatever, you need to have an audience already there for that to have some momentum. I'm not sure you can build an audience from scratch by posting personal posts. I don't think.
It's a balance, and I think that's a really good. I'm really glad you made that point.
Okay.
I think that's where I see people do, that all they share is what they've had for lunch or what they've done with their dog or which gym they've gone to once a week. Absolutely want to know about what you've had for lunch or which gym you've gone to, but I don't want to know about that every day. I actually want to know what you are as a profession, and that's where I think it's balancing the personal with the value post. The valuable post could be sharing surveys, it could be sharing valuable information about your sector. It could be sharing it, as a recruiter, interview tips. So
yeah, what I think what most people want, and this is also the thing that will put a lot of people off embracing social media, is they don't want you sharing a document produced by IBM or Dell or whoever, or whatever type of company. They if you're going to do that, they want to know what your insight is on it.
absolutely. And
What's your opinion?
your opinion on it. And that's where I think, it's not necessarily people are a bit reticent to share personal stuff. I mean, I'll use Shannon as an example again. She's been with Key Recruitment 7 years, and I can probably count on one hand how many personal posts she's actually shared. She's very private. But what she will do is she will give opinion. And I think that's where, I think it's about losing the stigma that when I talk about personal posts, I don't necessarily mean talking about periods and divorces and, sex changes or whatever. I'm talking about something that you feel personally strongly enough to share on LinkedIn to your community. And that could be, I mean, I do share like my sobriety journey. I talk about, my second husband coming out as gay, but I relate it to how it's made me who I am. And I make sure it always, I would like to think, combines with a lot of valuable insight. But I think that's where we are. It's a good example that I don't think you do need to sort of share all, but you can make it something that's very specific and opinionated.
Yeah, totally. I mean, look, I completely understand the whole kind of little glimpse into people's lives strategy. I get it, because if you look at the history of art in general, and it's everything from sculptures to paintings to cinema to photography to everything, social media, writing, essays, blogs. It's all about our obsession with ourselves. Everything. It is, if you think about it.
Yeah.
That's
the human condition, isn't it? That ultimately we are, as Homo sapiens, we are egos, and we choose to surround ourselves with people that make us feel good about ourselves.
Yeah, probably for the most part. I'm not conscious of seeking those types of people out, but anyway, that's a segue into something else.
Oh, going very deep here, Mitch, aren't we? So what do we get wrong? What do you think what makes you roll your eyes on LinkedIn when you look at a recruiter's post, like you think, oh God.
Blimey. How long have you got? Look, off the top of my head, LinkedIn posts. Yeah. Okay. I'm just trying to build a list in my head because I know there's loads, but I probably can't remember half of them. Probably the one that I've posted about most recently is starting the post off by talking about themselves or something that they want.
Right.
Yeah. I'm looking to speak to.
Right.
Yeah. HR generalists who live in Banbury. Yeah. Yeah, that's only going to resonate with people who live in Banbury, who work in HR, who happen to be looking for another job right now. Yeah.
So,
So
isn't it interesting? Because I just don't see anything like that on LinkedIn. My algorithm has clearly honed itself to knowing seeing the person stuff.
then other types of opening is if you're interested in blah, 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 then look no further.
Right.
Yeah,
Okay.
cheesy, been done a million times over the last 50 years. Um, there's quite a few little recruiter tropes that I've picked up because I've read millions and millions of words from recruiters over the last sort of 9 years, online in particular. What if I were to tell you that, yeah, that phrase I see so many times. It's a
Wow.
bit of a, you obviously not seeing it. Maybe I'm getting
No,
really meta about this because I'm in the words business, so I notice things.
you do.
Um, they
You do.
use the word role over and over and over. In a typical 350 word job ad, you'll probably see the word role used 5, 6, 7
Wow.
times.
Get a thesaurus, guys.
In this role, this is a role where this role requires you to,
You
all
forget
that.
your superlatives.
Oh, I'm coming to those.
I'm,
Yeah.
I'm coming. I was going to say, come on then.
And
Tell me
yeah,
some
look,
amazing superlatives that you absolutely detest.
I don't like any of them in marketing because they're
Disingenuous.
leakage that the person who's posting it doesn't really know much about marketing. So
Yeah.
their first point of call is like, how do I make this sound exciting? I know, I'll call it exciting. Yeah. And I'll call the product innovative. And and look, it's probably better than I don't know. Yeah, so adjectives kind of bum me out a little bit as well. Which leads me into, I think most recruiters, most people in the recruitment industry need to first think about what they're going to write from the reader's perspective,
Absolutely.
essentially.
Mm.
Yeah. What is the thing
I
that
believe
is
that's
going
the
to most,
starting point.
yeah, what's going to most attract them to want to keep reading? What's going to intrigue them or arouse curiosity or piss them off? Because I've had some humdingers in my time in terms of opening sentences. Sometimes I've had one where it's just been one sentence and that's it. So the headline was unavoidable. But yeah, yeah. Now, obviously, with that advice comes the danger that you get closer to clickbait.
Yeah.
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 Or in your rush to be in, or your enthusiasm to get something out that you think is a good idea, you put it out and then 50 comments in, you realize it was a bad idea because you didn't think it through. But just in general, I think recruitment has become even more of a marketing business than it was pre-internet. Pretty
It
much.
100% is. And which for me is very exciting because I actually am a qualified marketeer. I don't know if many people know that. I did my chartered marketing diploma in 1994. That's how old I am.
Wasn't from one of those universities in Denver, Colorado, was it?
I did it. I actually did it through the CIM at Wigan College while I was in my first ever marketing job. They put me through it, and then I got made redundant from that job, having got the CIM diploma. But I ended up not using it until I got into recruitment. So I'm fascinated by the evolution of recruitment, and even in the time since you and I've known each other, I can see how LinkedIn has transformed how people communicate. I think if I may say, my biggest bugbear on LinkedIn is these huge claims that people make, and we've just had a record month, and we've just had the best ever quarter, and then you go and look on company's house and find out that they've got debunches, and they haven't paid their staff. You go on Glassdoor and find out that they've never paid any commission. I can't stand the bullshit, to be honest with you, but I see through that. Maybe that's the agnostic view I have as a rec to rep, that I know the truth about a lot of businesses,
Well,
but
you need to. You
yeah.
absolutely need to. I don't look that deep when I see those kind of things. I just they gloss over me. I don't take a lot of notes of them. unless it's an agency that I know.
Yeah.
But if it's an agency I know that well, I probably already know the
You
news that
probably already know that they've had their record quarter and best
yeah.
ever, whatever else. So before we finish,
Mm.
what's your plan for 2025? Have you got anything exciting that our community need to be aware of that they can connect to you about?
I do actually, but I can't talk about it. Sorry.
Oh my God.
Yeah, no, I can't. You have too many listeners. I've told a handful of people privately.
Okay.
So yeah, I'm just still working through it. It may not come off, blah
Okay.
blah blah. So yeah,
Intriguing.
I'll tell you privately.
Yeah, tell me privately. And
Okay.
then if you're listening to this now and you really want to know, then you can bribe me. I'm only joking. I'm sure it'll all come to fruition. And we hope to see you at one of our live events at some point, Mitch. We've got a live event in Birmingham in November this year, 2024. But hopefully we'll be taking the podcast live next year in 2025 down south. So we'll put you on the list. Get
Well,
you.
yeah, Birmingham's quite easy for me to get to. I'm in between Birmingham and London actually. So
Oh, you're Milton Keynes, aren't you? We've talked about that last week. Well, you
yeah.
should come to the event then. We'll talk about that offline as well. Mitch,
Okay.
you've covered so much as I knew we would. And you are an absolute joy to know on and offline. And I love the fact that you started this by saying you're an introvert, because I think there are more introverts in recruitment than there are actually extroverts. And I would like to banish this perception that that's what we're all about, because I've learned
Yeah.
about myself. I am probably happier and more comfortable being in my own company, which means, does that make me an introvert? I don't know. But we have to socially integrate ourselves to be successful in recruitment. That's the reality.
It's when I moved into recruitment all those years ago, it was the age of the telephone. Yeah.
It
And
still is.
that's how pretty much all client and candidate interactions got started with a phone call, either incoming or outgoing. Yeah. Today we live in the age of the keyboard, which is why there are more introverts in the industry than there were 20, 30 years ago, which I think is a good thing.
I think it's a brilliant thing.
Yeah.
The inclusivity means that we have a broader spectrum of people, because the reality is that society is a broad spectrum of people. We are not all the same. So I think we have moved significantly beyond that whole stereotype of the brash, salesperson. Because even though I am quite an extroverted person when I need to be, I don't believe that's what makes you a good recruiter. I think it is about being consultative, listening more than you're talking, and really immersing yourself in a culture of a client. I don't think you should ever need to sell and be overtly, wolf of Wall Street. I've never subscribed to that in the 26 years I've been doing this fabulous job.
Yeah, well, the problem with those whole Wolf of Wall Street analogies from all those years ago on LinkedIn, you don't see them anymore. But it was about a sales methodology that was rooted in lying. It was just lies and bullshit. So,
Absolutely.
and
But
there's
that's
too many.
why social media, you can't hide behind it now because of things like Glassdoor. You can't hide behind TripAdvisor. You can't hide, or Google reviews, whatever, because you either deliver on it or you don't deliver on it, in my opinion. So I think that's where social media has created a much better perception for us all. But you are delightful to have on the show again. Thank you so much for joining us on the Recruiters Recruitment Podcast.
You're welcome. Thank you.